Dear students, in this module, I will be giving you the computer demonstration on the sign test. Now, let me remind you that sign test is used to test the single median about a single population. So, whenever we would have to test any median about a population which is usually unknown to us, then we can make use of this non-parametric sign test. And students, if you just remember, we apply sign test usually when the parametric approach is not applicable. So I will be taking a problem and we would be learning in this module that how to tackle that problem under the SPSS and what would be the procedure we will use for applying the sign test. So let me read the problem for you. Endurance scores of animals during a 48-hour session of discriminating responding are recorded. The median scores for animals with electrodes implanted in the hypothalamus were 97.5. So students, here if you just look, the first information we have received is the median, which is 97.5 in this case. Suppose that the experiment was duplicated in another laboratory, except that electrodes were implanted in the forebrain of 12 animals. Use the sign test to see whether the investigators may conclude at the 0.05 level of significance. So here we got another information, alpha, which is being given as 0.05. So we would have to test using the sign test that the median endurance score of animals with electrodes implanted in the forebrain is less than 97.5. So students, here in this particular line, if you just if you just observe that we are given with the alternative hypothesis, and we would have to show under this alternative hypothesis that the median has to be less than 97.5. That is to be tested using SPSS. So students, when we click onto the SPSS software, as I've told you earlier, that there are two types of windows that are being involved. One by the name of variable view and other with the name of data view. So first of all, we would have to enter the data. So here I have already entered the data by the name of the score variable. Now students, there were 12 observations in total. So under the variable view, I have already defined the score variable and now I'm going to enter that score variable. Now remember students that this data is measured using the interval scale. As you can observe that these are the scores and it is quantitative in nature. So students, whenever we have a data, the first thing we would have to do is that we have to test its normality. If we are not, we are not known which test is to be applicable, whether parametric or non-parametric. But as you have observed that in this particular problem, we are guided that we would have to apply the non-parametric test, that is a sign test. But in case you are not given with that information, so we know that score variable is a quantitative variable. So even we can, attempt it for using the t-test for a single sample. So students, in that case, we are not being given with the information that which test is to be applied to test this particular test hypothesis. Then the first thing you would have to do is to test the normality of the data. So for normality of the data, we have various kind of tests available in the textbooks as well as under the softwares. So students, there are two ways through which you can test the normality of the data. One is the graphical approach and other is the through the tests that are being provided in statistics. So here if you just see, I've mentioned that I will be using two types of tests. One is the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test and other is the Shapiro-Wilk test. Both of the tests, they are available in SPSS. So students, इनका use करते हुए हम test कर सकते हैं normality. So मैं क्या करूँगी? क्या steps मुझे follow करने हैं? I've clicked on analyze. Further, I've clicked on descriptive statistics and I chose the option of explore. Further, this window would appear before you. Score would appear here, your variable of interest. By using this particular arrow, you take it to the dependent list option. So we have moved it from the left side to the right hand side under the variable list. Further, I'll be clicking on to the plots button, and by clicking, this window will open. Further, I'll have to click on to the normality plots with the test. I'll press this continue button, and further I will press this OK button. So this particular information would appear in the output window. So under the output window, you can observe the p-value for the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test as well as the p-value for the Shapiro-Wilks test. As students, both the values are greater than 0.05, so we will accept our null hypothesis. And by the way, what is the null hypothesis? The null hypothesis is that the data follows the normal distribution. So if you just observe that this data is normal in nature. But if you just look into the skewness value, the skewness is less than 0. So it is negative. That means this data is negatively skewed as far as the measure of skewness is concerned. And if you just look into the measure of kurtosis, that is also showing a negative value, means that the data is flatter. The distribution is more flatter in nature. So if you just look into the normality test, they are indicating that the data is normal. But if you look into the measure of skewness and kurtosis, they are showing that the data is not normal. So there is a confusion as far as the normality is concerned. So that means that this particular question is a candidate for the sign test. So for applying the sign test, the procedure will be that I'll be clicking on to the analyze. Further, I'll be clicking on to the non-parametric test. Then the one sample option you would have to tick on. Then I'll be clicking on to the objective. Further, I'll be clicking on to the customize analysis. I will be clicking on to the settings button. And under that, I'll be checking the option of compare median to hypothesized value. Here this will Coxon signed rank test appear, which is also a non-parametric alternative to the t-test. Under the hypothesis median, students, I have written down the median I am going to test. Then I'll click on to the run button, and finally I would get that output as in whether to accept or reject the null hypothesis. So students, this was the procedure. We would have to opt for the sign test to test the single population median.